Good morning. Welcome back to our second day of learning for week 3 of distance learning. As we said before, we're diving into our module 9 from farm to table, and the essential question we're answering is, how does food get to your table? Our learning mindset is planning ahead. This means if we can set time aside, or rather be intentional about how we plan to use our time before the time gets there, we can be more productive. And we can make sure we have time to finish the things we need to have done. Today we're going to focus on text and graphic features. Remember, yesterday we said one of the ways authors draw attention to important parts of the text is using text and graphic features. So another way we can draw attention is using special punctuation. This is considered a text feature. These can be ellipses, em dashes, or colons. We can also modify the text by changing the print or words. We can use boldface, such as here, where the letters are darker, heavier than the other words. We can also use capital letters. Sometimes, depending on the context, capital letters can mean shouting, or because they are all uniform and large in size, they draw our attention. We can also use italics, which are letters that are slanting. We can use color, and we can use size. We're also going to look at graphic features. Graphic features are visual. They're quick to read. They're sometimes considered fun and easy to read. So examples of our graphic features are speech bubbles, maps, timelines, graphs, tables, illustrations, photographs, and other visuals. So as we read today, we're going to be looking at what text and graphic features does the author use, and noticing how they support the central idea. So our text is, how did that get in my lunchbox? And last time, one of the pages we read explained the process for how cheese gets into our lunchbox. Remember, your cheese was once milk that came from a cow. A farmer milked the cows, and a tanker from the dairy came to collect the milk. I'm noticing this word is highlighted, and the text is blue. The reason they used color here was to draw our attention to the fact that, number one, if I were to click on the live version of this book, that means the HMH version, it would open a box with the definition. We also have the definition in a box here. It has the word in bold, so that we know that's the word it's talking about, and then the definition. I also see they used color. The explanation is in kind of a dark blue or purple color, and the definitions are in black. And our links are in a lighter blue. In the dairy, cheese makers warmed up the milk and added bacteria to make it turn sour and thick. So here we can see special punctuation. They used ellipses here, 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 and here. And what that means is that these steps are continuations of each other. So steps 1 through 4 are kind of one step, and steps 5 and 6 have to do with after the milk is processed. I also notice these steps are numbered. When we had the example of bread that we'll see later, we just had paragraphs. But here, each step is in a circle with a number. So this is actually kind of a diagram because the steps are illustrated and labeled. So, continuing. Number 3. Then they added a substance that animals use to digest milk called rennet, and it changed again into bits called curds, floating in whey. So again, steps 1 through 4 have to do with how the milk is processed and becomes cheese. Step 5, they drain off the whey, chop up the rubbery curds, add some salt and press them into blocks. They store the blocks for months until the cheese was ripe. So they take this product that comes from the milk, the curds, they press it, add salt, shape it, and then store it so that it becomes cheese. The first and last paragraphs have to do with before it's milk, before it's cheese and after it's cheese. So here it says, bite into your cheese. It's creamy and smooth, but you're tasty too and tingly on your tongue. So this paragraph uses the em dash. Bite into your cheese. It's creamy and smooth, but tasty too, and tingly on your tongue. So we kind of read those as pauses because it's giving you a chance to consider more details about what it says before. It's talking about biting in your cheese, and then it's telling us about biting into our cheese. And at first it's talking about the texture, the taste, and then it goes into how it feels. Again, we have a box down here that has 2 words in bold, and their definitions are not in bold. So we see lots of text and graphic features. We see bold, size, color, uppercase letters. We see ellipses, a numbered list of steps or process, and we see em dashes down here. How did that get in my lunchbox? Now I want you not only pay attention to a few text features and graphic features that we see here, but also what is the central idea? And knowing the central idea, which text or graphic features support that? How did your tomatoes get in your lunchbox? Last summer, your tomatoes were growing in a big plastic tunnel full of tomato plants. The sun and the warmth made the plants grow tall and bloom with yellow flowers. As each flower died, a tiny green tomato fruit began to grow from its middle. Day by day, the plant sucked up water and the tomatoes swelled from green to orange to red. When the bunches of ripe scarlet tomatoes dangled from the branches, the grower picked them, sorted them, packed them, and sent them to the store. Pop one in your mouth and squish the sweet sour juice out. Scarlet. If something is scarlet, it is a bright red color. So again, we see capital letters with larger capital letters and bold capital letters emphasizing tomatoes. So the central idea of this page has to do with tomatoes and how tomatoes get in our lunchbox, which is the main idea of the book. How different foods get in our lunchbox. These 2 pages describe which food? Tomatoes. We also see this color text, kind of a dark blue or purple, used for the description, except when there's a link, such as here. The vocabulary word is highlighted, and the lighter blue color with the underline indicates if we were in the HMH version of the book, when we clicked on it, it would open a box with a definition. But we still have the definition down here. Pop is in all capital letters, and it appears to be appealing to our senses. It's letting us know that this is going to have to do with eating it because we're putting it in our mouth and squishing the sweet sour juice out. Let's look at the graphic features. We have some illustrations. This is a great illustration that supports the detail where the tomatoes came from. It's telling us they come from a big plastic tunnel. So this is what that tunnel would look like. We read another story that called it something else. Remember Will? What was a large enclosure that was made of glass called? It was similar to this. We also have this really nice subtle diagram. It's not labeled as a diagram and the steps are not labeled, but it supports what the words in paragraph 14 and 15 say. It talks about how as the tomatoes flower and develop into a tomato, they change colors, pardon me, until they're ripe. When they're ripe, they're that scarlet color. This illustration shows how the tomatoes have to be hand-picked because they're very delicate. If a machine were to do it, they would probably get damaged. And here we can see how the tomatoes are sorted and packaged so they can be shipped. So the text and graphic features here point to the central idea or the definitions of words, or showing us we're no longer talking about the process, but when we actually have the tomatoes and we're eating them. They emphasize details about each paragraph, but also about the overall text. We also have graphic features that support the details in the paragraphs, which are illustrations. How did your apple juice get in your lunchbox? Last spring, the apple trees in the orchard were full of flowers. In summer, tiny apple buds grew from each flower stalk. The buds kept growing, and by autumn, the trees were full of ripe, sweet fruit. Pickers climbed into the trees and filled their bins with fruit. A truck took the bins to the juice factory, where sorters threw out any rotten apples. Oh wow, I'm noticing that now we're starting on some numbered steps. This reminds me of the other page that described the cheese process. Then a machine washed the rest and mashed them in a milling machine, seeds, skin, and all. A huge press squeezed the mash till all its juice ran out. A heater warmed up the juice to kill off any germs and poured it into cartons. Suck hard on your straw to taste the apple tang. So again, this is kind of a pattern the author has been using. She draws our attention to which food we're going to be talking about by putting it in uppercase bold letters in the subtitle. She also says where the food originated, which is in an orchard or in a cow in the case of cheese, or in a greenhouse in the case of tomatoes. And she ends by reminding us how it tastes or feels. She uses sensory descriptive language. In between is the process. When we're talking about the orchard, she uses paragraphs. Once it's in the processing plant, that's when she switches to a diagram, just like with the cheese. So in the steps, each box has a step in the process of producing the juice. And we have arrows, circles, lines that show us, the direction that the apples move in this process. We also have the visual that shows us what this machinery looks like, just like with the cheese and the bread.